All right, well, ACSC family and parents, supporters, alumni, anybody watching this, we're grateful that you're watching another one of our summer interview series for 2020. And I'm here with Adam Paw and Jasmine Turner. We're outside of Adam's house. He's been grateful to let us come over. And we are, not really.
I'm just vibing with it.
Yeah, he likes it. We're at North Atlanta Church of Christ, and we are, Jasmine and Adam are on staff here. And so we're going to have a conversation about substance abuse, and particularly what it looks like in college students, and how you can recognize it in yourself, and maybe even how you can recognize it in friends and help them, and also how our ministry can better serve people who are struggling with substance abuse. And so these Jasmine and Adam have a lot of wisdom to drop on us. So I'm just going to have a few questions to guide the thoughts and to move it along. But first, I want to hear about you. Just found out something about a national championship. So Jasmine, tell us about that.
Yes, okay. Well, I would love to. I played basketball back in college. I'm not going to name what year that was, but when I did play basketball, my first year of basketball, we won a national championship. It was like probably the most exciting time of my life.
Really? Mm-hmm. What college?
College of DuPage was this school. It was a school based in Illinois, Glen Ellen, Illinois.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
So she likes to brag. I just have to say this. She likes to brag about this national championship because we have a little debate at our church about who would win in a one-on-one game.
And he just cannot admit that he knows that I will whoop.
And every time we have this conversation, she pulls out her national championship talk. And so anyway, that's just for the listeners out there, just know that that's what's behind here. She's just trying to front on me right now. So just so you know.
Can I throw in one more thing for the listeners out there? Right back there in this parking lot,
I was set up.
I literally dunked on Adam. Like literally, there's video footage, proof, everything. I dunked on Adam.
I was set up. I was in ninth grade, 1996. I'll name the year. In 1996, I was the defensive player of the year, green team. Okay, so I don't want to hear nothing about national championships.
That's good. Yeah, you have a claim to fame. So, what's your title at North Atlanta Church of Christ, Jasmine?
Yes, I am the recovery minister here at North Atlanta now.
All right, and you've been in that role, you said, for a little over a year or so?
Yes, I've been the sole recovery minister for about a year, but both Adam and I started back in 2017 as an intern and interned until 2018, and then we both were the anchor minister, and in 2019, last year, I became the sole anchor minister.
And so Anchor is the name of the recovery ministry?
The anchor ministry,
okay.
Yes.
And Adam, what's your position here?
I'm the adult discipleship and connection minister here. So started 5 years ago, was the anchor minister for a few years, and then I transitioned to the adult discipleship and connection minister.
Awesome. And so, and y'all can decide who goes first, but how did you get involved in recovery ministry? How did it become a passion of yours to where now it's part of your job is to serve people in that way?
Okay. Well, I'll say it like this. When I introduce myself as Jasmine, being a person in long-term recovery. And so what that means for me is that it has been a little bit over 9 years since I've used any drugs, alcohol, or mind-altering substances. And I remember my darkest days, and then some that turned into my lighter days, and I just have a passion for helping others the way that someone else helps me, the way that someone else helped me and still helps me actually until this day, including Adam right here. But I love to inspire hope, because, when I came in, I was broken and I was scared and I was lonely and I was angry. Just so many different feelings, and I didn't have any hope. I didn't love myself. I didn't know, if I could even do this recovery thing. But I had people in my life who believed in me, who told me that they loved me, who supported me even when I didn't know how to support myself. And so if recovery happened for a dope thing like me, then I know that it can happen for anyone else. So that is where my passion comes from, to just help as many as I can. If they can just make it one more day, that's what it's all about. Everything that I do in life, it's all worth it because I just know how it feels.
And so for you, your passion for recovery ministry comes from just your own personal experience and how people helped you.
Yes.
You want to help others the way that you were helped. Before we get to you, Adam, you mentioned before we started recording just that you wanted to talk about the language we use to apply, for people who are struggling with substance abuse. Will you talk about that for a minute, just to get that outline at the beginning of the conversation?
Yes. So if you notice, when I just did that little introduction, I said my name is Jasmine and I am a person in long-term recovery, opposed to my name is Jasmine and I'm a recovering addict. Now, if I'm in like any 12-step groups, I will do as they do in the 12-step groups. But if I'm talking to a group of people who, might not know much about recovery or, haven't experienced the recovery life too much, I want to say my name is Jasmine and I'm a person in long-term recovery, and then follow that with, and my recovery has afforded me, and name some good things, because when you say addict, the mind automatically goes to what one might have seen on TV, or to just stereotypes pretty much around that word addict. So it's like, changing up the wording a little bit just to give it more of a positive light, because recovery is possible, so you don't want to just automatically put addict, or there are even other words or saying and phrases as well that we can, I can't think of any right now, but as they come, I'll let you know. But it's just changing up the wording a little bit just to give it a more, to direct the mind in a positive direction.
That's good. Thank you. And Adam, what about your background? How did you become
so
involved?
got my master's of social work. I went to Abilene Christian for my undergrad. So my master's at University of Texas Arlington, and in the social work field, we just you study clinically how you support those who are struggling with different parts of their life, different things. So addiction is one of those, and I just found myself in the field. I started in school social work, and it honestly just kind of happened. I got into prevention. I started speaking in schools, and through speaking in schools, I just started counseling people, specifically teenagers and young adults who struggle with addiction. And so the disease of addiction is the way that I call it. And so that's kind of what started it. And it's a long story about how I got from there into ministry, but I got into ministry. This is the perfect place for me to land, was as the recovery minister, because it took my education and my professional experience, and it married it with my faith.
Okay.
And so I will say this though, my best friend, what brought me to Jesus was my best friend in high school struggled with the disease of addiction. Weed every day, drank constantly, and his life was falling apart, and so much so that I lost track of him. And I was invited to I think it was like an outreach Bible study. I'm not sure. I didn't know how shady Christians were back then. So I was invited to go play ping pong at someone's house. I know then a youth pastor gets in, bang, So and he was like, hey, let's pray for someone that you're worried about. And so I hadn't really prayed before in my life, and so I prayed for my buddy. His name's Brent. I prayed for my buddy Brent, that God would deliver him and save him, and from what was going on in his life. And the next day, I hadn't talked to Brent in over a year, and the very next day Brent called me up and was like, hey, I want to give my life to Christ. And he's like, I want to be a pastor. Well, now this man is a pastor in Minnesota, has an amazing testimony, still doing God's work.
Yeah.
And so when I really think about what got me into this, it was all the way back when I was 16, praying for my buddy Brent and watching God deliver him from that, and the impact that's had on my life.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, so at the very beginning, you've used the language of disease of addiction and people who are in recovery.
Right.
But we throw around the word addiction a lot. You're addicted to your phone. You're addicted. I'm addicted to coffee. I'm addicted. And we use this word. But how would you define an addiction, particularly in this context?
Yeah, that's good. You want to go first?
Sure. I would say my personal belief is that an addiction is more of a brain disorder. I don't think a person wakes up and says, okay, I'm going to go out and become addicted to alcohol, or just become addicted, because the consequences that come along with becoming addicted to drugs and alcohol, are so bad. But I think it's more of a brain disorder. It's or a disease, as Adam said, and it's something that needs to be treated and constantly treated. So I would say more of a brain disorder than just a choice to go out and continually do.
Yeah, not a moral failure.
Not a moral failure. There you go.
Yeah, not a moral failure. Yeah. Yeah. When I don't. This isn't going to answer your question directly, but like whenever I worked with young adults, there are some questions I would ask to help know if we have a problem here, right? So we talk about tolerance. You know, how has the tolerance increased over time? You know, so maybe you started with 1 or 2 beers, and now that's increased to 4, 6, and then so on and so forth. And you know, you need more to get the same feeling. You know, your body can tolerate more. So you know, we're looking for tolerance to know if we have an issue. You know, we look for like negative consequences. Have you had negative consequences? And you know, are you still continuing to use even though you've got a DUI, even though you've been kicked out of school, even though your parents have kicked you out, or even though everybody around you like, hey bro, you got a problem, and you continue to use. Like, so, you know, have you had some negative consequences and continue to use? You know, do you like spend time obsessing and planning and thinking about it, and you know, those kind of like things. You know, we talk about like the allergic reaction. Have you ever heard that term? Used the term, the
Yes.
allergic reaction? Like, so sometimes you'll like be talking with someone, and they'll be like, man, when I took that first hit, it's like kind of like off to the races. Yeah, like it was just, and so like
So when you just explain that a little bit more, like just like the first drink,
Yeah.
they're just in.
Right,
It's-
just first. Now that's not for everybody. Not everybody has that point where it hits that. But for some people, for whatever reason, they take that hit, and it's a different feeling. It's a different high, and they have to just keep going back to it, regardless of consequences, regardless of how much money they have to spend. Like, they're going to keep on going back to it. So these are the kind of questions that I'll ask to kind of start seeing. You know, do we? You know, what is this become more of a problem for us? Is this moved into more of a disorder? You know, or is this something that is not at that level yet? And so I'll use those kind of questions to help start defining what's going on.
So how do you? So do you use those questions to kind of distinguish between, I guess, an unhealthy use of just say alcohol versus someone who's say have an addiction to alcohol?
Sure.
'Cause,
Yeah.
I mean, since we're talking about college students, obviously, the abuse of alcohol is pretty rampant on college campuses.
Right.
But a subset of people who are using it, misusing it, you know, messing up their life with it, a subset of those would be addicted. Is that how you think about it? Like,
Well, I think that it could be either or. I mean, I think someone could have a really bad night, and you know, and that have some major consequences for their life, and alcohol play a major part in that. I don't think that necessarily means that person has a disease of addiction, but of course it could. So I mean, it's really, you know, trying to draw the line can be kind of tricky. I like to say this, like, are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? Like, are you just at that point where it's like, I think about the prodigal son. They wake up, they look around, and they're like, I'm in the pigsty here. Like, my life has gone, you know, has gone bad, and I need to make a change, you know. And so I don't personally spend a lot of time trying to convince someone they have a problem. I want to spend time asking them questions and asking God to help reveal, hey, we need some extra assistance here.
okay.
I know one thing that I, you know, when I'm working with someone, I just plain out ask them, you know, tell me some ways that your life, that you might feel powerless over this, you know. And by that, I mean, like, you know, sometimes you wake up in the morning. I can even say for myself, when I was in my active addiction, you know, I would work a job and I would get a paycheck, and then I would say, okay, only this much of it I'm going to spend on my stuff, and everything else is going to pay bills, and I'm not going to touch it, and I'm going to save, and I'm going to do this. And I would start off with that much, but then the obsession, I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I just wanted more, and it's just like I would go and get it before I know it, and before I know it, the whole check was gone. And then unmanageability as well. You know, if I started to miss work, or if I started to be late for classes, or you know, things with my son, if I just couldn't manage the things in my life, and that's how I knew I really had a problem. That's how I knew that I needed help, that it was something that I needed to go to the next level for help for, is because I was powerless over it. That's all I could think about. That's all like I would go to sleep and my mind would just be on that. And if I didn't have that, I was irritable, and I was angry, and I was just so many different emotions that then once I got it, then it took me to I feel more comfortable being under the influence or whatever. But that powerlessness and unmanageability is a huge way to tell and ask a person that. And sometimes, you might get the whole story because we don't like to admit that we're powerless. We don't like to admit that we're might not be able to manage life. But once we are able to humble ourselves and admit that, that's the first step to recovery.
Let me ask you a question about that. Sometimes it's almost a cliched scene that you see in movies or on TV of say someone who's addicted to alcohol and their friends are saying you have a problem, and the person says, no, I've got it under control. Mm-hmm. So internally you're saying that there's a feeling of unmanageability and powerlessness, but is there also an internal conflict? Do at times you feel that powerlessness, but there's a sense of shame, so you put a front out to people, or do you go back and forth about, I really have it under control, but you don't? I mean, it can be both and, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it can be both and, and then there's pride. It's like admitting that I have a problem. Then once I admit that I have a problem and that I need help, then, my family is going to know, and my friends might know. And so there's that shame of that, and then there's pride. So, that's sometimes one of the biggest hindrances of someone getting help is, I think, shame and pride. And it's like, change is also, it's different. So if I admit that I need help and I admit that I need to go into a treatment center or talk to a counselor or talk to someone about this issue, then I might be looked at in this certain way. I might not be treated the same way. So there's a whole lot that can come into that will prevent a person from really admitting the powerlessness. And sometimes it's just denial. I think it's just like, like you were saying earlier, I got this, I can handle this myself. We want to be Superwoman or we want to be Superman, and thinking that we can handle it all by ourselves. But the disease of addiction is bigger than us. It's much bigger. Like they say, it's cunning, baffling, and powerful. And it's very...
Cunning, baffling, and powerful?
Cunning, baffling, and powerful. It's like very tricky. So earlier you guys were talking about, he said something about that first drink or whatever. Like, so for someone like me, I have a little bit over 9 years in recovery, and I'm grateful for that. However, my drug, I'm just going to keep it real here. My drug of choice was heroin. And I started off with weed, though. And when I was in high school, I started off smoking weed, and, then I started off drinking a little bit, and that was my thing. And even going into college, I was, still smoking, and I was drinking, and that was that. And then I was drinking so much and I was smoking so much where it stopped affecting me. Like I wasn't getting that same feeling that I was at the beginning. And I was able to, we would go out and, after, school or, whatever little parties at night, we would go out and, drink and smoke. But I was able to keep going after everybody else was done. And I was like the designated driver, but I was drinking and smoking the most. And I'm really serious, I was the designated driver. But that right there, but even in the moment though, I didn't know that I had a problem. I didn't realize. Now that I'm able to look back on it, I know that is where my disease was just starting to really, really escalate. And then, so because I wasn't feeling those drugs or those alcohols or the weed and the alcohol, then I graduated to something else because because different things in my life I didn't want to feel, whatever those things were, I didn't want to feel those feelings. So I said, okay, I need to try something else to try to get rid of those feelings. And today I know that even though my drug of choice had become heroin, like my number one, today I know that I can't touch weed, I cannot touch alcohol, I can't touch any drug, because I believe that even if I just took a hit off of a joint, it would trigger something inside of me that would eventually send me back to alcohol and then maybe send me back to heroin, because I just believe that that's for me, but I can't try anything, say, oh, maybe I can go and have a drink or something like that. No, I cannot. I don't want to, because I believe for me that it would lead me. And sometimes they say that you pick up right where you left off. So wherever I stopped using that, they say you'll pick up right there. And I don't want to be that person again. I don't want to go back there. So I just choose nothing.
Let me ask you, and I'm sorry to sideline you so much.
As much as possible.
Yeah.
That's all good.
But you said that when you graduated beyond weed and alcohol, that looking back, you can see that that's when the problem really started.
Mm-hmm.
But when was the moment that you realized you had a problem?
I realized that I had a problem. I was in school. I had tried school. I don't know who's all going to see this video, but anyway, so I'm thinking about, should I say this or should I not? But anyway, just keeping it real. Yeah, so remember that. But
When you say school, you mean high school, college?
no, now I'm talking about college.
College, okay.
So I was very, very good at basketball. So even after the first, I'm not talking about the school where I won the national championship. After I won that national championship, I got 3 basketball scholarships to 3 different schools. And drugs and alcohol, I just finished and got my bachelor's in business management with a focus on human resources in 2018. My first year of college was 2000. So drugs and alcohol took over my life in college. And, I lived the college experience and all of that, but the disease of addiction was so prevalent and so strong and so much bigger than me. My first love was basketball. And I'm talking about I eat, sleep, drink, like the way I said I was thinking about heroin or whatever all the time. That was my love for basketball. I would wake up in the morning, and I lived in Chicago where it snowed. I would go out there in the snow and I would play basketball. It was like everything to me. But on the college campuses, all the parties, I was able to drink everybody under the table. I was able to smoke everybody under the table. But because of those decisions, because of, using, I lost those scholarships. I lost those scholarships, and then I chose to go back to my go back home. And then because of the shame and the guilt that came from that, so when I was back home, of course I indulged like even more because I didn't want to feel that I just lost a whole basketball. I love basketball, but I just lost a whole basketball scholarship. But then somebody else would call me because they remember how good I was. And then I would go and try again, right? It would make it so far, but I was still smoking it. And like, I can do this. I got this. This time, see, I know what I did last time, so I know how to go about it this time. I'm not going to mess this one up. This is my second scholarship, right? Third college, second scholarship. I got it. I remember how I did that, so now I'm just going to finagle it a little bit differently this time. So I forget where we're going, but yeah.
Is that basically how you started to know that you had a problem?
Yes, that's the question you asked me. Yes, that's how I knew when I started really losing my scholarships and just really, my life was unmanageable and I was powerless over using drugs and alcohol.
Would you say that that's a pretty common, pattern, that it's not so much the amount you were using, but it was the effects in your life that caused you to recognize it was a problem? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that a common point in people's story?
Yeah, from my experience, when I counsel people, that's what helps them start realizing something's wrong. Their kids start being taken away, they lose scholarships, legal issues, job issues, family. We'll probably talk about this in a little bit, but talking about how we support people, when our enablers in our life stop being enablers, and they start letting the person feel the effects of their choices, that allows people to get help quicker, because they need to start feeling some of the consequences to what they're living.
And we definitely need to talk about that.
Yeah. From my experience, I feel like I can't tell you how many people have said, "Hey, God saved me through the sheriff's department." Kicked in the door. Saved my life via going to jail. In a lot of ways, that having those negative consequences is what helps people kind of wake up and go, okay, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah.
I need to do something different.
That's it.
So 18 to 25-year-olds, kind of college young adults, what are the, I'm trying to not ask a dumb question, like what are the common substances that people, that you see people struggling with addictions with in that age range?
Well, I mean, obviously alcohol is number one, right? And then marijuana is number two. So
can I stop you on
Sure.
that? Because you've already said this, but I think a lot of people wouldn't see marijuana as something that
Sure.
one gets addicted to. And so explain that for a second.
Well, I mean, it's from my opinion, clinically, I don't think that's true. I think you can be addicted to marijuana,
Okay.
and I've heard plenty of personal testimonies to confirm that. But again, can you build up a tolerance to marijuana? Yes. Can you have negative consequences to your life and keep using the marijuana? Yes. Can it become unmanageable and can it consume your thinking? Yes. So you can use all the kind of criteria questions you want, and marijuana can still fit in that. So for me, the answer is yes, you can be addicted to marijuana. I don't know if you would answer the same.
Oh, yes, I 100% agree. And I know one thing that makes marijuana, especially in today's world, is because it's becoming legal in certain states. But in my personal opinion, like I've already told you, that's what I started off with marijuana. But then eventually, I was looking for that calm, but I wasn't getting that calm anymore. It was like I woke up, had to smoke, to go to bed, to come to a meeting like this, to just sit down and talk to people, to function. And so sometimes that's what we need to ask, just ask those questions. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's cigarettes, if it's weed, if it's alcohol, like how much of a control does fill in the blank have on my life? And if it has like some kind of control where I have to and I can't function without it, then we might need to kind of look into that.
So in your recovery ministries, you would work with people.
Oh yeah.
Let me ask
Lots
you
of people.
about pornography, sex addictions. Do those fall into the same?
Of course, yeah. I mean, go check out the website, fightthenewdrug.org. That's a great website. Talks about pornography as an addiction, doing the same things, changing the brain structure the same way that heroin changes the brain
Is that the
structure.
one Lamar Odom's involved with? Is that the one?
It might be. I
Okay.
think it might be. 95% sure that's the one Lamar Odom's part of. But yeah, great website, great resources. So yeah, now, so like there's great. I mean, we have groups that are offered through our counseling center for sex addiction. Celebrate Recovery is a recovery ministry that will offer support for that as well. So yes, absolutely, that would fit in the category of addiction.
So we were talking about common substances. So you said alcohol's up there, marijuana. We were talking about sexual addictions and pornography. What else that you see frequently in 18 to 25-year-olds, particularly college students?
Sure.
Pills
Yeah.
and
Like what?
Xanax.
Okay.
I know is a big one. I was just recently working with someone and just said that was and this person was in between that age range that you're speaking of, and they just said that all my friends were doing it, so Xanax and like opiate pills. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people are using those uppers so they can stay up and study, and keep going. Or, yeah, of course, the opiates opiate addiction is obviously huge. Here's a process this is obviously it's not for everybody, but this is a process that I've seen a lot of the young people go through. Is high school, start experimenting with alcohol, go to marijuana. At some point be introduced to opiates through that. And as they get older, opiates on the street are pretty expensive. Over time, it costs you a lot of money. And so what they'll do is they'll go to heroin to get a very similar effect.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's like a trajectory that I've seen a lot of people go through is alcohol, marijuana, get introduced to opiates, and then onto heroin.
Okay.
And so that's just obviously it can look very, very different, but I'll tell you from my experience working with teenagers and students is I found that people use for some common reasons. One is they're self-medicating. Right? They're self-medicating themselves, and this is why we have to be very gracious. Like, this is why I think it's very important to be gracious, because we all do stuff that works for us, you know. And so, man, if you are just struggling with anxiety, or you just, you know, for whatever, you just feel like you need to calm down, you need to relax, and you don't want to think about a trauma, or you don't want to go think about your parents' divorce, and you know. People do all types of things to self-medicate, and it might work for them for a little bit, and it might be manageable for a little bit, but that eventually that it's not sustainable. It's not a sustainable way to cope, but that's what starts it, is they self-medicate and they want to feel a certain way to escape. And so we can't bring shame upon those people. I think we all understand that we all do things to try to help ourselves along, but that's just not a sustainable path. That causes a lot of destruction. Another reason that people start using it in high school and college is it's a way of connecting. You know, it's like simply just a way to connect and, you know, to make friends, to hang out with people. It's a common social thing. And again, you know, they go into it with good intentions, not good intentions. They don't go into it with negative intentions or bad intentions. They're not thinking about it, but because their desire to connect, or maybe they just have a hard time connecting with people. They don't have that, whatever it is that helps people connect with each other, that a substance will help them feel like they can connect with others. So I've just seen so many of our young people start down this road because they're medicating themselves, trying to escape from trauma and pain, or they're trying to connect. So I just think it's important that a college ministry, recovery ministries, churches, we just remember to be very gracious, because we all do things to try to help connect with each other. You know, coffee. How many times have we invited someone to go? How many times have we invited someone to go, hey, go to coffee, because that's a way that we can connect with each other. And so we have to recognize, it's not a healthy way of connection, and it's not a sustainable way of connection, but that's what's going on behind the scenes. So by offering grace and understanding and another place to connect is really the best thing that we could do as we work with teenagers and college students.